What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more MMA DFS picks, DraftKings lineup advice, FanDuel tips, best bets, everything you need for UFC St. Louis, Derrick Lewis, Rodrigo Nascimento. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined as always by Jake the Snake, owner of MMADFS.com. Jake, what's up, man? How you doing?
Pretty good, man. Too bad we lost that one fight earlier today, but we move on with 12.
Absolutely. So now we're down to 12 fights. And if you're new to the Occupy Fantasy channel in general, we break down DFS, many slates here, many sports. Every Friday or Saturday, we have a UFC related show. Anytime there are 12 or more fights. For those of you that are viewers of the channel, you may have seen the show once or twice, or maybe you watch it every single week. What we do here, we break down the main event, the five rounder from a betting and DFS perspective. This week it is Lewis and Nascimento. We analyze the newcomers on the card. We actually have zero this week, so this might be a quicker show. We play good fighter, bad fighter, good matchup, bad matchup for those fighters on the card that have less than 4 fights in the UFC. Give some context to their stats and their fight logs. And then we'll close out the show with our favorite underdog fantasy pick and play of the slate, a fight that you have to target in DFS. Hint, there could be a lot of those on this card. And we'll close it out with our stream parlay of the week, where we each pick a bet, we parlay it together, and we try to purchase a corresponding vehicle with the proceedings. So let's get started, and let's talk about this main event, Jake. Derrick Lewis, Rodrigo Nascimento. You were earlier in the week telling me that Nascimento was undeserving of the spot. I replied that if you're 2-4 in your last six, you're also undeserving in Derrick Lewis's case here. But nonetheless, this is what we have with the main event. We've seen this time and time again with Derrick Lewis in a 5-round fight. Is this fight any different? How do you expect it to play out? More importantly, what do we do with it in DFS?
Yeah, I mean, you were being generous on Derrick Lewis because he's only 1-4 in his last five, so you were throwing that extra win in
Yeah,
there.
it's
But
true.
I'm proud. It's a typical Derrick Lewis fight to some extent. I mean, he's coming in 39 years old, 18-10. He's got almost 30 UFC fights. We all know who he is. He's a big power puncher, slows fights down, not a ton of volume, very rarely mixes in a takedown. He's coming off that surprising 25-minute decision loss against Almeida. Everyone expected that to end quickly, and it went on forever. Uh, Obviously, Nascimento is not Almeida. He's a massive step down in competition outside of the fact they're both Brazilian grapplers. That's where the similarities basically end. Because I haven't been very impressed with Nascimento at all. Obviously, you kind of foreshadowed that with me talking about how he was undeserving of this spot. Yeah, he's 4-1 in the UFC plus a no contest that was originally a finish. But he's coming off three straight close decisions. Two of those were splits, and he's been fighting like absolute bums. Like two of his four UFC wins were against Dante Mays. Two of them.
Mm,
He's got like the win over Latifi, who's like 40 years old. I mean, they're just not impressive wins. Tanner Boser, who then dropped down to light heavyweight and has since been cut. And he was going to like split decision with these guys. Somehow they're like, yeah, you're in. You're in the main event. I don't know how that works out, but yeah, three close decisions against low level talent. Suddenly you're facing Derrick Lewis. So obviously, big step up in competition for Nascimento, big step down in competition for Lewis. You never know how those are going to go. Sometimes you get a change in the guard. Other times, you send them back. But obviously, we saw Lewis spend 5 rounds on his back in his last fight. Nascimento is a grappler, even though he's not, an exceptional grappler, not an exceptional striker. In his last fight, he came out hot against Mays, quickly slowed down after the first round. So I would say not exceptional cardio. So you kind of look like, where does he win the fight? Like maybe he wins the grappling, but Almeida couldn't submit Lewis in 25 minutes. Do we really think Nascimento is going to? Like, I don't think so. I mean, the guys that have knocked Lewis out have generally been power punchers. I don't think Nascimento qualifies as that. And he showed he didn't have great cardio in his last fight. So, I mean, neither does Lewis, but is he going to outlast Lewis? I mean, even Almeida didn't even outlast Lewis. That fight could have gone like 35 rounds of just Almeida laying on top of Lewis. It could still be going right now.
yeah.
But basically, long story short, I think this has the potential to be a lower volume fight. Maybe Nascimento finds a little bit of grappling. I don't think he's just going to completely dominate the fight on the mat, even though Lewis doesn't have the best takedown defense. He's decent at getting back up. You always hear people talk about, oh, with Derrick Lewis, he just gets up when he wants to, unless he's facing Almeida. But 53% takedown defense. So, I mean, I guess that's sort of promising for Nascimento. But I still think Lewis probably knocks Nascimento out. And whether or not this fight returns a useful score depends on if that comes in the first round or the second or later on. Because Derrick Lewis is basically reliant on first round knockouts to really score well. He has like one score basically above 100 points since in the last like 9 years in a fight that has made it past the first round. And that was against Alexei Oleinik, another grappler where that fight played out on the mat and Derrick Lewis was kind of able to fill up the stat sheet and get a finish. So always possible that a second round finish gets there, but pretty decent chance if this fight lasts longer than 5 minutes and Derrick Lewis gets a later knockout that the main event will not be in tournament winning lineups. So I don't think you have to play a piece in tournaments. And in terms of low risk, we're never looking to play or to stack Derrick Lewis fights in low risk because the loser is probably going to score very poorly. And even the winner may not score that well. If we get a second, third round knockout, you could get like 90 combined points between these two potentially. But you never know. Lewis, had that one resurgence fight where he came out against Lima, threw the flying knee, got a 30-second knockout, quick win bonus. Only win in his last 5 fights, and he said he's feeling great. He said he wants to do something similar. I mean, what else is he going to say? So he's still got the upside, but it's definitely a little bit of a risky fight.
And it is, I think there's so much risk attached to it for all the reasons you laid out, Jake. Low risk obviously makes sense not to stack it, but then who do you play? Do you play Lewis? I guess you do. He's a favorite inside the distance here. We've been talking about small field more lately, 3 max types contests, 200 players or less, 100 players or less. And what do you think about these types of fights? And I've always struggled with these where the winner is likely to score 90 plus. The loser is likely to score 0 to 5. And if it somehow makes it out the first round, and we could say that about a variety of fights on this card, then you're stuck scoring 50, 60, 70 points. Granted, only 12 fights on the card, and you can't fade all of them. But, I've come around more recently to just not playing these fights in general. And if I miss out on a 100-point winner, that's fine. I could try to make it up elsewhere. But what are your thoughts on, especially this card with so many fights that have this type of dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tricky if you're looking for, guys with decent floors and decent ceilings, but I have no problem leaving this fight out altogether because, I think there's a really good chance Derrick Lewis gets like a second round knockout and scores like 90, 95 points there.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on. We have no newcomers on the card, so we'll play good fighter, bad fighter, good matchup, bad matchup, everyone's favorite game. In fact, the last time I called something everyone's favorite game, someone on Twitter, it was a completely different game, by the way. They said, I hate this game. Do not call it that. So I guess we're not safe in calling it there. So if you disagree, put it in the comments. If you do think this is everyone's favorite game, let us know in the comments. Put a timestamp. Let us know that you do like this game. So I'll name a fighter that has less than 4 fights in the UFC. We keep it brief. Jake says, are they actually a good or bad fighter? Is this a good or bad matchup on this particular slate for their skill set and for DFS scoring? And we always start with the first fight of the night. Just a reminder that the Kevin Jousset and Jarrett Gooden fight is off, so we're down to 12. So if we're looking at good fighter, good matchup, bad matchup, we're taking to fight number 10, which is Trey Waters and Billy Ray Goff, newly named Billy Ray Goff, I should add in the DK API. So Billy Ray Goff, Trey Waters, Jake, both these guys less than 4 fights. In fact, just one UFC fight for each of these guys facing off against each other. Is either good or bad? Is this a good or bad matchup for either?
Yeah, I think they're both still bad, but that makes it a good matchup for both of them.
That is true. And for those who haven't watched their fights, if you could describe each of their fighting styles in maybe 5 words or less or 10 words or less.
Yeah, so Waters, super tall, counter striker, will look for guillotines. Billy Ray Goff, more of a wrestling background, brawler, gets dropped immediately in most of his fights, finds ways to come back and find knockouts of his own.
All right, fair enough. So we do have Terrence McKinney on this card. Everyone's, it depends on your relationship, I guess, with how you've played him in the past, but one of the most predictable fighters in the UFC for how his fights are likely going to, he's either going to get a round 1 knockout or he's going to get knocked out or finished in round 2 himself. He's fighting Esteban Ribovitz, who is a pretty sizable favorite here, $8,900. And Ribovitz just 2 fights in the UFC. Is he good or bad? I'll write it in cement. In hieroglyphics, it is a good matchup for Ribovitz, I assume.
Yeah, I still think he's bad, man. Really bad takedown defense, but he's got good attributes. Like he's high volume, he can strike, he's durable, and he can get finishes. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely a good matchup. It's obviously a low floor matchup, but a high ceiling matchup.
And you and I were talking about this offline earlier this week. You mentioned when McKinney has been a dog, hasn't performed that well. Granted, different competition. In this matchup as an underdog, how do you favor his matchup? I know he's not a good fighter, bad fighter candidate here, but in terms of when he's normally an underdog versus this situation.
Yeah, so I think he can find wrestling success here if he chooses to go that direction. But I mean, I talked about in the write ups, anytime like he goes to grapple, it's just like milking his, his clock. And he has like a 3 minute clock until he dies. So do you really want to spend that 3 minutes on someone's back? Because you're going all in on the submission at that point. But I do think that's his most likely path to victory is taking Ribovich down and locking up a rear naked choke or something.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, a fight that a lot of fights on this card. In fact, this stretch of fights here is going to be incredible to watch. It's going to be very painful for DFS, I assume. But let's talk about fight number 6 here. Roberto Despain against Cortez Acosta. If you watched all of our shows when Despain made his debut, we said, all right, this guy likely has bad cardio, likely has no ground game. We're not sure because he knocks Edward out in 15 seconds. But this is the UFC. He probably won't do it in his debut. It takes him 18 seconds to knock out Josh Parisian, so he did, in fact, do that. Can't possibly do it again here, Jake. Kenny against Cortez Acosta. Is Despain good or bad with the additional 18 seconds of tape we have now? And how do you rate this matchup against Cortez Acosta?
I mean, it's obviously the toughest matchup Despain has ever had, but at the same time, it also feels like a tailor-made matchup for him to not have his flaws exposed because Cortez Acosta never controls anyone, never takes anyone down, keeps his hands low, and just wants to strike with dudes in crazy brawls. So like, if you just told Despain all of that, he'd be like, "Sign me up,"
Where do I sign?
regardless of how good or bad Waldo is as a striker. And I mean, he hasn't proven that he's like exceptional. He couldn't finish Arlovsky in his last fight. He was just dicking around the whole time, like pelvic thrusting at him. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a tailor-made matchup for Despain, but it is a step up in competition. So if he is a total fraud, he could get exposed here. But stylistically, it's a perfect matchup for Despain to continue to find striking success.
Well, hold your breath on that one if you have any sort of bet in that fight. Next, we have Mateusz Rambetsky, who has put up 104 plus points in each of his 3 UFC fights. This will be his 4th fight against Diego Ferreira. Is Rambetsky as good as his game logs and fight logs indicate? And how's this matchup rate with Diego?
Yeah, man, I think he's legit, man. He's a good fighter, and I think it's a good matchup. We've seen Ferreira get dominated on the ground in his last 3 losses. I know he's coming off that win against Michael Johnson, a knockout win a year ago. But man, he's getting old. He's 39 years old, and he's given up a ton of takedowns. He's been finished on the ground in 2 of his last 3 losses. It seems like it's set up for Rembetsky to find success here and probably get a finish. I know Ferreira's a black belt, but I talked about that in the write up. That's actually a good thing because it probably eliminates the potential for a really efficient submission win for Rambetsky. So if he does get a finish, it's probably going to be ground and pound, which is going to score better. So I think it's a little bit like it's a step up, but it's also a little bit safer because he's not going to get like a 97-point submission win most likely.
That's fair enough. And you mentioned your write-up. For those who are not familiar, check out Jake's site, MMADFS.com. Full owner, full content creator there. He writes up every single fight from a betting and DFS perspective every single week. I do not envy his job most weeks. So go check it out. If you're interested in learning more about all these fighters and all of these matchups, MMADFS.com is where you can get that. And if you made it this far and you like what you've seen, give us a thumbs up is the best free way to support the show. And if you're not already and you've stuck around this long, you like what you see. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Less than 50% of our viewers are subscribed to the channel. It's another free way to show support, but it is mutually beneficial because every time we do these videos every Friday or Saturday, you'll be notified when we go live or upload the video. Just click the free red subscribe button below this video if you have not already. Even if you don't really get on YouTube that much, just do it for us, please. Thank you. All right. Next, final, a short notice matchup with Joaquin Buckley, who was trying to get on this card for the longest time, showing up at press conferences in disguises with a mustache. Finally got a matchup here where there's Sultan Ruziboev, who I'll just say both of his wins so far, frustratingly high scoring given what we know about his regional tape. All 75 of his regional fights that we watched. Ruziboev here. Jake, I'll say it, generally lower volume, not much offensive wrestling, yet has scored 97 plus points each time. Will he continue to break that trend here?
I don't think so, man. I'm gonna keep betting against this guy. I mean, it was bullshit last time. He like poked Demas in the eye and then knocked him out, and they didn't overrule it even after like showing that it was like an eye poke that started the whole finishing sequence. So I mean, the whole Atlantic City commission on that whole card was super sketchy. But anyways, I still think the guy's kind of a fraud. Obviously, he's super tall, has a ton of power. He also has some submission skills. Now he's trying to cut down from 185 to 170 pounds in like 2.5 weeks. I mean, he did it. Like he's not trying to. He did it. But we don't know the effect that will have on his chin, on his cardio. And yeah, he fought at 170 earlier in his career, but it's been a couple of years, so we'll see what impact it has. But yeah, I mean, if he gets another finish at his cheap price tag, he's probably going to end up in the optimal at like 40% owned or something stupid.
Fun.
Um, so hopefully Buckley can survive here in front of his home crowd and not let this dude just continue to finish everyone in the first round. I think Ruziboev has 10 straight first round finishes. So like he's due for not getting one, right?
Going for number 11 really quickly. So obviously, Buckley, ranked contender, a step up in competition from Dumas, from Bruno Ferreira. How do you think stylistically Buckley poses a matchup threat for Rosie Boev?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big step up in competition, obviously. Like, I think Buckley has been improving. He's been looking way better at 170. Obviously, he's 7 inches shorter. So he's going to have to overcome that. But crazily enough, they have the same exact reach. So if he can get past the stilts of Ruziboev, I think Buckley has better movement. I think he's a little bit more fluid of a striker, whereas Ruziboev is more of a counter striker, just looking to catch people. So I'm curious to see how it plays out. I'm kind of expecting a lower volume fight. I wouldn't be shocked to see Buckley win a decision here. I think he just needs to stay safe. I know Buckley's been prone to getting knocked out in his career, 4 knockout losses, but 3 of those were at 185. Is at 170? It seems like he's been a little bit more durable here. And I mean, in fairness, he is facing a 185-pound fighter, but we'll see how the weight cut goes, man. I mean, historically, underdogs cutting that 15 pounds have not fared very well. I think the last 7 have lost in a row. So, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm taking Buckley in a low volume decision for all the chalk to bust in the co-main event, and it'll be a hell of a sweat, or it'll be over in like 45 seconds.
I mean, this is the ultimate slate for sweating and fading chalk. It is, I mean, so much potential to make a lot of money or just watch a quick knockout and your winnings drop down the drain. So love seeing that. So, all right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk about the underdog fantasy pick and play of the slate. Now, if you've been watching these shows, you hear our promo for it. If you're subscribed to the channel and you see our underdog best ball draft videos pop up 4 times per week, and you're like, what psychos are drafting best ball contests in May? Yes, it's us. And you may tune out. You say, I'm not going to watch that video, or I'm just going to fast forward through this underdog promo. Let me stop you right there, because if you are in an underdog fantasy eligible state and you haven't signed up yet, consider yourself extremely lucky. Because now, for whatever reason, Underdog has changed the promo for the longest time, maybe since they even started. It was deposit $100, get $100 extra as a bonus for new users. For whatever reason, this week they upped it to $250. So $250 free dollars to use on Underdog Fantasy. If you deposit $250, they'll match your bonus up to $250, match your deposit up to $250. All you have to do is sign up if you're in an eligible state, use promo code Occupy, and you can get and use that funds for either the pick'em that Jake is about to tell us about, or you could do the best ball drafts, or the pick'em champions is extremely fun where you compete peer to peer in these pick'em style contests. Underdog Fantasy has a lot of games to play. If you haven't signed up, just say you've got the timing right, because now they've upped it from $100 to $250 after being at $100 for like 4 years. So promo code Occupy at Underdog Fantasy, get $250 with your deposit bonus. So Jake, with all that being said, which line stood out, or which pick'em stood out to you this week on Underdog?
Yeah, I like Hadley over 50.5 significant strikes there. I think that fight's going to be pretty high volume. Neither guy's ever been finished. They're both really durable. And, I know Charles Johnson's really struggled on the mat, but Hadley hasn't landed a takedown yet in the UFC, even though he's a grappler. So I think we're going to see a bunch of striking volume. I think he could probably double that. So I feel pretty good about over 50.5.
When Jake has a pretty good read on these types of pick'ems, whether it's for betting or props or these types of price picks, or underdog, whatever it is, and he says they might double, generally he's right. So Hadley, he's expecting to nearly double his underdog fantasy pick'em line. So Go check that out if you haven't already. All right, next, Jake, fight the target. Whoever wins is likely to score extremely well. We could just pick it out of a hat, and it would probably be just as likely. Which one gets the honor for you this week?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Borshev Chase Hooper fight. I think whoever wins there is gonna score well. I don't think that Chase Hooper is durable enough to survive very long on the feet, and I don't think Borshev's good enough on the mat to survive very long there. So I think we're gonna get a finish, and I think whoever wins is gonna score well.
That is an excellent transition into our stream parlay of the week, the final segment of the show. And again, if you watch this far, we appreciate you. Very binary fight. So I'm going to go under 1.5 rounds in this fight, plus 102 for my side of the stream parlay. If it stays on the feet for more than like 60 seconds, Hooper's in trouble. If it hits the mat, a sub is probably coming. So under 1.5 at plus money, nonetheless. So Jake, what do you compare it with?
Yeah, I like that, man. I was surprised when I saw that was at plus money. I'm gonna go with Goff round 1 or 2 knockout. It's plus 460. His money line is plus 135. He's had 5 straight knockouts in the first 2 rounds. I think it's a large percentage of his win equity is in that. So I like that line at the longer odds. And we gotta get this up there somehow. So I can't just give an even money play. We can't both do that. So plus 1031 on the parlay. I just want to point out last week, man, we just Brito just took his sweet ass time. If he could have gotten that first round finish instead of round 2, you hit your leg. Pereira round 1 sub at plus 700. I had Brito round 1. Would have been plus 3180 last week. Brito gets the second round finish to sink it.
Well, either way, if people
let's get it
followed,
back this week.
that's all right. If people followed your advice, you had Brito round 1 or 2 in your bets that you gave out. So people made money regardless betting last week. So again,
True.
if you're interested in that, Jake's site, we talked about it already, but he gives out early bets earlier in the week to get ahead of the lines. He gives out bets all throughout the week. MMADFS.com for free and premium MMA, DFS, and betting content. Go check it out after the show. OccupyFantasy.com. I am the co-founder there. Jake helps out and writes the daily plug for our site. Top plays, best remaining bets, lineup construction tips. I still think the most important section of any article in the industry is the lineup construction tips. It tells you explicitly how to play this slate on FanDuel and DraftKings based on the fighters and ownership that we have. Our Occupy model is up and running as it is every Friday and Saturday. It ranks every fighter on FanDuel and DraftKings using our proprietary metrics. Your favorite DFS analyst or player is subscribed and uses that as a part of their projections. Not even joking. So if you're not using it, you are missing out on money in MMA DFS. And our lineup builder allows you to build up to 300 lineups using the Occupy model values and our custom rules using optimal lineup criteria. So lots to digest here. UFC St. Louis is here tomorrow night. If you have any questions, you can comment on this video. Give your opinions. We always like hearing those, but we'll always answer your questions. Drop a comment below. And our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Link is in the description. That's where you can chat with us, talk with other members of the community. Most importantly, sweat out the fights with us. So for Jake, at DFS_MMA on Twitter, I am at Brian Jesser FF. Thank you for watching, and good luck and enjoy UFC St. Louis.